You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to another edition of the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Klassen, and joining us today is someone who truly embodies sales excellence, Curt Tueffert. He's America's master sales motivator. Curt is a powerhouse in the world of professional speaking. He's an accomplished professor, a published author, and a fellow podcast host. So he understands, not just in the sales world, but in the online world, how to keep that conversation engaging and flowing. Now, Curt currently serves as a vice president of sales development for a $2 billion industrial distributor, where he puts his extensive knowledge into practice every single day. His expertise spans sales, marketing, leadership, and customer service. And his trophy cabinet includes the prestigious Stevie Award for his contributions to sales development. When he's not transforming sales teams in the corporate world, Curt serves as a facilitator with the Brooks Group. He's also a professor at the University of Houston, instructing students in sales and marketing strategies. Now, just before we welcome Curt to the show, a quick request of you as you listen. Please share this with 3 of your friends. I know that many are going to appreciate today's conversation. And now, Curt, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on the 5 a.m. podcast today.
Hey, Michael, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on.
Now, you've built this impressive career spanning the corporate leadership, education, speaking, and even being able to be an author. Could you take us through your journey of how these diverse experiences really shaped your approach to sales and leadership?
Sure. Gosh, Michael, let's go all the way back to college.
Okay.
I wanted to get a degree in computer science. I thought I was just going to sling code for the rest of my life. And I went to a fundraiser for an organization that I was involved in, and the speaker, his name was John Neighbor, the Olympic swimmer.
Oh, wow.
And he had me mesmerized from the moment he got up there. And as soon as that little talk was over, I rushed the stage and I said, "Man, I want to be just like you." And he said, "You have to get a degree in speech communication, and you need a hook." And I said, "I'll change my major tomorrow. What's a hook?" He says, "Curt, I have 8 Olympic gold medals. Companies hire me to speak for them because of what I've done. What do you got?" And I said, "I got nothing here except maybe I graduated high school." He said, "That's a great place to start. You can start speaking to high school kids on what's it like to be in college. And once you graduate college, you can start speaking on what's it like to graduate college." So I went into the counselor's office shortly after that meeting of John, and I said, "I want to change from computer science to speech communication, completely different disciplines, left brain, right brain." So I got a degree in computer science, a minor in computer science, major in speech communication. Actually graduated with a lot of honors because I think I found my pace at that point. Then I started selling, and from selling, I got into some opportunities to speak, and my path just kind of unfolded in front of me. I just took every opportunity I could. Connected with the National Speakers Association, where I started learning about what would it be like to walk out of the world of corporate and walk into the world of speaking. Did that for a little bit, then walked back into the world of corporate, and still to this day, I've had the opportunity to take everything that I've learned to the students at the University of Houston, to the corporate clients, and as well as to the clients from the Brooks Group. So it's been quite a ride.
Well, that sounds very engaging of your journey through life and leading up to this point. And of course, people look at the successes that we have. You know, they even a one-hit wonder musician has probably 20 years or 15 years of empty halls and beer bottles and bar fights, them trying to perfect that craft of music that they're so passionate about. And I want to ask you, you mentioned the word honors, which is something that I tried to achieve in my degree program, but the bar was a little bit high for how much I could jump. Can you talk a little bit about those formative years of that? We have to change our thinking, I think, almost about when the levels that we want to achieve, because if we are fulfilling our passion, like it sounds like you were describing, those high benchmarks sound like they could become a lot easier to achieve.
Michael, I think once you find what that niche is, whether it's in your teens, your 20s, your 50s, your 60s, they're really, it's almost empowering to the point of saying, wow, I struggled so hard when I got my computer science degrees. Engineering and mathematics was the hardest thing. The tutors were helping me. I would go to the professors after class. It was just a very difficult sludge for me. When I changed to speech communication, every class came naturally. When I started getting A's and I started getting on honor rolls and I started looking at my report card and my GPA was increasing and growing and growing, that was absolutely exciting to me. During that time, I was actually working part-time at a place where I was doing some computer programming. And just the way luck would have it, when I graduated from California State University, Northridge, I moved into a programming role at this company. And shortly afterwards, they said, Curt, you're kind of disruptive. These programmers are introverted. They like to be quiet. They like to think behind their little keyboards, and you're just annoying. Maybe we have a better job for you in training. So the things that I was programming for the automotive industry, I turned around and I started training and teaching how to use the software I just wrote. So early on in those formative years that you've just mentioned, I think I had the opportunity to just, you know, bloom where I was planted, and I was planted in the right environment. And from there, I just continued to tap in on those strengths.
Wow, that's really nice. And there's a lot of foresight, it sounds like, from the leadership where you were kind of cutting your teeth, and they actually saw the maybe the rough that you as a diamond were sitting in. And
Yeah, they were tolerating me for the longest time because I would be just so outgoing in a computer programming world. And once they saw me on the other side, then they smiled and they said, "This is where he needs to be." And I had an opportunity to learn a lot of how to work a room, how to articulate, how to do all those things. It just, like I said, a series of events. The company I worked for was acquired by a different company from the East Coast. I was on the West Coast. I got integrated into a training and development department with 9 other people, and they taught me how to structure, how to do a lot of things. And from that point on, it just continued on.
that teaching component is so critical. Even in your role as being a professor and facilitating this education, I'm thinking of networking because as you were talking, I was thinking about people saying to me in certain positions of leadership that I had of I'm very uncomfortable with networking, and we have this big sales event, and we have to like interact with all these strangers. And can you talk a little bit about how it's actually something that's taught and caught?
Yeah. I think when you're talking about networking or just the art of being interested in another person, as I talk to people who have to do that, they want to or they have to network,
Mhm.
you've got to go in with the attitude of curiosity. ABC, always be curious.
Yeah.
Curious about the other person, curious about their story, about asking them open-ended questions. Even the best introvert can ask open-ended questions to allow the other person to give them all that information. And I think in networking, if we're going out there to push our own business card or to do what we need to in order to push our agenda, that's not as effective as finding someone else and playing more of a longer game. I know
Mhm.
I'm going to meet this person. I'm going to ask them questions. They may indirectly fit the profile I'm looking for on a business partnership or anything in the future. They may or may not. I might collect their contact information, and then I might professionally afterwards say, "Hey, we met at this thing Wednesday night. And the reason I'm calling is that I think we had a conversation regarding something that could mutually benefit us. Would you be able to spend about 15 minutes on the phone? And let's see where that leads."
Yeah.
And that moves through that networking phase.
Yes, and you never know who you're going to meet. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. 5am Podcast is brought to you in part by mkci.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. MKCI helps companies maximize their AutoCAD, Inventor, Navisworks, and other design software investments. Their innovative products like the CommandSys script editor and the Clash Management Suite will streamline your workflow and boost your productivity. Visit mkci.ca today. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5am Podcast. Can you maybe give us some nuggets of that body language when we're networking?
Sure. You want to make sure you don't come across like you're sucking on a lemon, that you're constipated facially.
Yeah.
You want to be able to lean in and make yourself a little bit present when somebody's out there. If you're introverted, or if you're held back, or if you're just not feeling it that night, then you might want to do some self-talk about, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
If you're there on purpose and intentional, go strike a conversation with one person. Maybe one becomes three, three becomes five.
Hmm.
But the idea here is you've got to be curious about those other people. And it may be something that's like, okay, that person's about my age. Okay, I'm going to go approach that person, or that person's completely older than me. I'm going to go ask them some questions. I might draw them out from their legacy. Who knows? They could be doing these networking events for 20 years and they might be able to give me all those nuggets. So I think that body style or that body language is we've got to be
Yeah.
open hands, if you will, and
Right.
not sitting in the corner with our arms crossed, our legs crossed, our eyes crossed,
Hmm.
scowling at everybody. That's not very welcoming.
Yes. So many years ago, my wife and I would do some charitable photography and other things like that. And one of the gentlemen that we got to work with was Walter Gretzky, who many people may know is the father of the hockey star Wayne Gretzky. And Mr. Gretzky, Walter, what a fascinating conversationalist. That guy could talk to just about anything. And we got to spend a lot of time with him and ask him all kinds of questions. And he always had something. And I probably, I don't know, the second or third time we had gotten to know each other. And I said, Walter, how, like, you just know so much. And, he's probably in his late 70s, maybe at that time, mid 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there. Um, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, Michael, I knew I've had to do a lot of these things being Wayne's dad, and I just started reading books. I
Mm,
wanted to acquire information so that I could always have something to share." So that was his personal development. Can you talk about some of those maybe tips or tricks or techniques for personal development so that we don't run out of ammunition?
you bet. Boy, when Mr. Gretzky talked about picking up information, I think we've got to be a little bit book smart. We've got to pick up information. I say the word book, and I'm sure the audience we're
Uh,
listening to right now are foreign to that. We're using digital media, we're using online things. I remember way back in the day, I think it was Zig Ziglar who was saying
uh,
to me in a cassette tape, use your car as an automotive library, as a
mm,
university. And boy, I learned that in my 20s, and I would plug in cassette tapes on things I wanted to learn about. Now we've got podcasts, and I go a lot of places and I listen to a lot of different podcasts because I want to be a little bit more than the most interesting man in the world. I might
yeah.
not have that Dos Equis ad flair to me,
Yes. Right.
but I really do want to be able to collect stories. Another good influencer in my life is another one of those business philosophers, Jim Rohn.
Hmm.
And, he always talked about collecting other people's stories so
Yeah.
that you could then relive them with that person and then retell them later on. So, boy, I love that. The story you just told, I was in the room with you right then, and I
Yeah.
was I was just peering over your shoulder as you were talking to Mr. Gretzky. What a phenomenal story that you had a
Yeah.
chance to share with me, and now everyone listening can relive that same experience with you, Michael.
Yes, and his wisdom lives on in these stories. And speaking of Jim Rohn, boy, what a powerful voice and mind he has been through the generations or the decades. And he said, fortune is in the follow up. And so this is like after the cold call, we've got the follow up. Can you talk a little bit about uh, maybe those younger salespeople who they've broke the ice, but now they are thinking, "What do I do next?" And Mr. Rohn tells us fortune is in the follow-up.
Oh, Michael, there's so much, and I was just listening to some Jim Rohn this weekend. For me, the follow-up is easier now with our sales pros because we have CRM, we have
Mm,
customer resource management software. It's almost insulting if you're not using some type of an automation to remember everyone you've ever met and
mhm,
put their information into some kind of electronic Rolodex and capture a couple of their stories. And so the very next time you talk to that person, the very next time you follow up, hey, Michael, I want to just follow up to see how that scuba diving trip went for you.
yes.
And I'm not calling to sell you anything, Michael. I'm just curious because I did some research on scuba diving while we were away, and I have a couple of questions. Well, now you become the authority on a follow-up call. Maybe later on we'll talk about the quote or the proposal, or
Mm,
the last time we spoke, you said this wasn't a good time or you were never in the market for this. But I found out on your social profile that you're into whatever that other
yeah.
thing would be. So now you become that detective of all the people in your electronic Rolodex, in your CRM package. I also use an automated process where I do direct mail, postcards, and they're automatic and they drip on people. And so it's a set it and forget it kind of a follow up so that my name is top of mind awareness.
Mm,
Just so if it's not very expensive and it's good for even the skinniest budgets, we find tools to keep us unique, to keep us there. I
yeah.
think it was Zig Ziglar who said, if you're not distinct, you will become extinct.
Yes.
And I'm sure that Rohn would have said something
Mhm.
almost the same.
Yes. What a blessing those men have been to so many people. We do know, I can't remember who I heard this from, but the world's favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Exactly.
And can you talk about how, as salespeople, we have to resist that and we have to tune into our prospects radio station?
Yes. Yes. And to that prospects radio station, they're always thinking two simple questions. So what? And who cares?
Mm.
I've got this really great glass sanitizer. So what? Well, we've got something that shows us who cares. We've got to be able to understand that it's WIIFM. What's in it for me? We've got to turn that
Yeah.
microscope to the telescope and really try to understand the other person. It's not about me, the sales pro. It's about me, the person asking open-ended questions to determine if there's even a future fit between us. And if there is, wonderful. If not, tell me a little bit more about your last name and what's the origin. Have you ever been there? I still
Yes.
want to have a conversation with you because you might know somebody who knows somebody who might have a
Mhm.
need for the product or service that I might sell. And I'm just wanting to be that better human being that leaves the mark better. I want to
Yeah.
find that person feels like, wow, that Curt guy, he really cared about me. He really drew me into the conversation. He wasn't trying to sell me anything.
Yes. Yes. And there's another phrase. Let's see how it goes. A man convinced against his will is of the same
Same
opinion.
opinion still. Yes.
What a great saying. And it's in my mind, and I'll let you speak to this too, of when we get that, when we get someone who we see is set against, their arms are crossed and we reach out our hand to open up their body language. And man, we need to know the individual. And
Exactly.
can you talk a little bit more about that developing that relationship because it develops the network?
Sure. When you want to get to know the individual, if you're a sales pro and you're in a certain niche or a market or a vertical, you kind of know the kind of people that you're talking to. If you're in pharmaceuticals, you're talking to doctors and office managers. If you're residential, you're talking to homeowners and renters. In the industrial distribution space that I play in, plant managers, maintenance managers. You kind of get to know their personas. You become an expert at their persona so that eventually you can get to know the person. Here in the Texas area, beginning in November, it's the beginning of deer season. So there's a high probability that some of the people that you work with or network with would be avid deer hunters. Obviously, you're going to want to have that conversation as it relates to those areas. I think there's just a lot to the intentionality of trying to connect with that other person And then we use as many arrows in our quiver as we can. And if we don't have enough arrows, and we go out there and we source more arrows for our quiver. And I know your listeners are probably just shaking their heads. We're bantering back and forth on analogies and
Yes.
similes and metaphors, but it works for us.
It sure does. It sure does. And what is that world without having maybe the right thing to say at the right time, hoping our lips to God's ears that we have the right thing to say at the right time, because you never know what somebody is going through. And that developing that relationship is just so critical, right?
And it really could be to the point of where you don't talk about the sale, but you talk about, the last time we spoke, your son was going to be in that baseball tournament.
Hmm.
How'd that go? I mean, it's most of us listening to this call, if we're leaning in and we're in sales, we got to close the next deal. We got to make 50 calls. We gotta. And I just am so frustrated by another person trying to sell me something when I ask a simple question, what do you know about my business? And they're like, well, that's why I'm calling you, so you can tell me. Well, gosh, the company DXP has been around since 1908. You should come with a little bit more preparation. What do you know
Yeah.
about me? I'm on social media. I mean, if you go on my LinkedIn profile and you see the awkwardness of the quirkiness of it,
Hmm.
that is a handle. That is an invitation for that person to jump on that. And I've had 2 people jump on it in 24 months.
Wow. It's fascinating. There's so many tools out there.
Yes,
And okay, so here's another one, fortune favors the brave. But the just throwing that out there, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be free for today, but being able to know that we can dig in with the tools that we have, and part of that fortune favors the brave is someone who's going to give of their time, brave with their time, to research who they're going to be talking about, because it's not just about me or you. It's not just about the salesman or woman. It's about that being able to fulfill a need, provide a service, and expand the company, be responsible to those that get to sign the checks for us. Right. So
exactly.
now
And so how do you
yeah.
become brave there, Michael? Um, there's a great scene from a movie called We Bought a Zoo.
Oh,
And
yes.
and Matt Damon is in that movie, and he was explaining to his kids he needed 20 seconds, 20 seconds of courage because he was gonna go approach now their mother. He saw
Ooh.
her in a diner, and he wanted to approach her. And for our sales pros out there, I would say sometimes it's just 20 seconds of courage to make that extra phone call.
Yep. Yeah, sitting out in that parking lot, step 1, I can shut my vehicle off. Step
Good.
2,
Yeah,
I could release my seat belt. Okay, step 3, now I've gotta open the door. Maybe I should find a step 2.5. But,
exactly.
I
Yeah.
I I wanna ask you, in your role as VP of sales development, you're continuously navigating this evolving landscape of sales. What do you see as the most significant shift in sales methodology over the last, let's say, 10 years?
Wow. What a great question, Michael. The shift in sales methodology in the last 10 years. I would say that the advent of repeatable, predictable processes
Mm,
like CRM, like AI, like some of those tools that we have today is truly a game changer for 2 reasons. One, it removes the salesperson from repetitive roles. That's a negative to the salesperson.
uh-huh.
And 2, it gives those creative sales pros more tools to get better at being curious. Let me kind of break that down.
Okay.
If you're a salesperson or if you're a business owner or a leadership position and you reflect on your business, your vertical, your niche, um, and you're finding that there are processes that can be automated, repetitive and predictable processes, order inquiry, order status update, order entry. If that all can be automated, then that salesperson isn't needed anymore. And to the owner, that's great. That's one less person on my payroll that never gets sick. And if I can replace that person with an automated process like Amazon, they don't really have salespeople, but we buy a lot of our product from Amazon because we've done our research prior to coming to the place where we place the order. Now, to that salesperson who's a little bit nervous, get better at asking great questions. The sales methodology, the process of building trust and rapport, of asking questions in the discovery stage, to bridging that into the demonstration or the apply stage. All of that has all these new tools with AI that can help me ask better questions, to understand their behavioral styles, to do some kind of a quick thumbnail SWOT analysis so I can differentiate my value proposition from who they're currently using, the incumbent, or maybe their lackadaisical attitude of, I don't need that. Well, if I can do that research ahead of time, I can make a much more compelling argument why you might need it. You might not
Mhm.
need it now, but if you give me a couple of minutes, let me just kind of ask you a few questions to see if there may be a fit. So those are the two roads, if you will, the fork in the road, if you will. Repetitive tasks being automated by AI, and great salespeople getting greater by using those same tools.
Yes. So do you think that there is a sales segment in America right now that n- um, maybe is a little bit more of a tough slog or uphill battle right now than it used to be?
Sales development rep, or BDR, business development rep, these three-letter acronyms get thrown around. That's a slug. In the industrial space, every place we go, or most places we go, are guard shack related. We can't
Mm.
get to an industrial plant, to a chemical plant, to a food processing plant unless you go past the guard shack. And if you don't have an appointment, you can't get in. So it's daunting, and so people just throw up their hands. On the opposite side of the desk, I've got filters, I've got spam, I've got all these other traps that prevent me, the receiver of the sales pitch, to wanna see you. I can hide behind all my tech, and that way you can't get to me. And so,
Mhm.
well, Kurt, if I just give them 16 more voicemails, 22 more emails, and 18 more text messages, they may want to see me. Well, I think they're ghosting you for a reason. So
Yeah.
we've got to get creative to find out, is it through what you said in the beginning of our podcast, Michael, networking?
Hmm.
If I know you and you know Bill, but I want to know Bill, I may ask you, Michael, could you give me a soft intro to Bill? Hey, Bill, this is Kurt. Michael said it'd be okay if I called you. I understand you two have a great relationship that stemmed in college and you kind of started a couple businesses together. The reason I'm calling you Bill is because,
Yes.
and there's a little bit of that bridge.
Right. And then, too, you talked about the postcards, those handwritten little notes, and let's say the birthday or Christmas cards. Those have always, from my experience, and the other consumers that I know, I worked with a guy, boy, this was back when I was in college. This is something that has stuck with me all of these years. His name was Eddie. He had an uncle that always liked newer vehicles. And he said, we were talking about this. I don't know if it was a new dealership that was opening up or something like that. And Eddie said, no, my uncle, this guy that we were talking about, he only buys from so and so at XYZ dealership. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And he said he's been shopping there since the 60s.
Hmm.
So that was like 30 years. And he said he goes there because the salesman that he first dealt with sends him a birthday card and a Christmas card, and he will just not go anywhere else. In fact, if he wants to buy something that this guy doesn't have, he asks him to source the car for him.
Interesting. I love where you're going with this, Michael. When we talk about a holiday event like a Christmas or a Thanksgiving
Mhm.
or a birthday, here's a better one for your listeners who are
Okay.
doing this. If you know their birthday is in January, then when is their half birthday? Send them a half birthday card. And
Okay.
that is so clever. In fact, I teach that in some of my Fortune is in the follow-up. And if somebody calls you back to thank you for sending a half birthday card, you have a hot prospect on the end
Yes.
of that line. And you could be smart and savvy about, well, I know it's hard to get older, so I just wanted to give you a gentle reminder that you could stay at your current age for about 6 more months before you have to transition to the new age. What's been going on with your life? Last time we talked, you were going to go on safari. And it
Mhm.
just goes with that one, and of course, I don't handwrite my cards anymore, I use a service for that
Right.
because most of the time, when somebody gets a card from me, they're not so hung up on the fact that it was automated on a computer that
Hmm.
generated the signature. They were more, "Hey, he thought of me. He thought of
Yeah.
me on my half birthday," or, "Hey, we got Thanksgiving coming up or Christmas coming up." And because we're automating, it's very easy for me to go ahead and use all the personalization about inserting their name, inserting their spouse's name, and then having that personal touch. The next step further on that one, Michael, is gifting. Again, the service I use, I can engrave their name or anything I want in the gifts that I send them. So if it's an automotive situation, somebody comes in and gets their car repaired. I typically tell the business owners of an automotive repair, how many times do you have to do a $2,000 repair? Curt, it's very frequent. Well, I bet you've made a lot of money on that deal. They trusted you with a $2,000 repair. Could
Hmm.
you send them 2 brownies? Could you send them a mug, a
Yeah.
coffee mug, a ceramic coffee mug, thanking them for the fact that they could have gone anywhere to get their car serviced, but they came here, or anywhere to get their dog neutered, but they went to this veterinary, or whatever that would be? We capture their name, address, city, state, zip. We capture all this information, and now we're giving them what I would call lumpy mail,
Yeah.
something that doesn't come in an envelope. It's like, what did my vet just give me? Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
it's a candle holder or it's whatever it would be, and people remember that.
Yes. Boy, I tell you, thinking back to some of the car purchasing experiences that we've had over the years, uh, we had this was in '09. So this was, and I only bring up the year because Chrysler was having some financial issues along with a few other brands. And so we were buying this new, it was a diesel Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Mhm.
Delightful, delightful vehicle. But I got to tell you, we could not get any lumpy mail or swag out of that dealership at all. And so I will say, since then, the three other vehicles that we bought have not been from that dealership. And it's surprising that, that we remember who was nice and who wasn't.
Southwest Airlines sends me a birthday card every year.
Wow.
I mean, United doesn't. My
Yeah.
dentist, my doctor, they don't. And again, everybody captures this information. I don't have to know the exact
Hmm.
date. I just
Yeah.
need to know the month and maybe the month and the date. I don't even know the year. I just want to celebrate your birthday and then
That's right.
subtract 6 months. So these are things that sales pros can do that is in that fortune. And,
Yeah.
it follows the brave because you're going to go out there to do that. You might
Yeah.
have to ask them for what their birthday is.
Right. Now, I want to ask you about your book, The Five Stones for Slaying Giants.
Okay.
Obviously, we're imagining images of the young David kneeling at that brook, getting ready to face that giant and that enemy. And I'm sure that that title alone just resonates with a lot of people. Could you share what inspired you to write it, and what are those five critical success factors to apply, probably both to business and to life?
You bet. You bet. So, when I left the corporate world to jump into full time speaking and training, I had a partner, and his name Jim Jacobus. Jim and he saw me. He let me apprentice underneath him, and he was going to write a book, and I was going to write a book, and we're both very alpha male esque people. So my job was to write my book before he did. And so I was on a quest. I went to a few seminars on how to write a book in 60 minutes or in 6 months.
Okay.
And so I collected all the information. I came up with 5 key areas. I love the David and Goliath story. I've been a follower of that all of my life. And so I thought, okay, I know that I'll do the research, and the 5 stones are passion, excellence, vision, value, and confidence. And I started to craft my book as something that you could read on a very short flight, because back then when I wrote it, the internet wasn't as robust as it is today. AI hadn't even been on the scene. So we were still at that stage in our speaking careers
Mm.
where publish or perish was always a good cliche. So when I wove those 5 stones around the David and Goliath story, I was appealing to sales management, customer service, leadership, motivation. And I
Mm.
tried to write the book with enough teasers and all of those areas that if I was speaking on leadership, you could buy my book. If I was speaking on sales, you could buy my book. And there was another author at the time, John Eldridge, who wrote a
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal book called Wild at Heart, and it
Yeah.
became a national, international bestseller. John's writing style was to use a lot of current movie analogies. Now, if I was to give my son or somebody 20, 30 years younger than me the Wild at Heart book, they might have a really hard time understanding the movie analogies because it wasn't part of their age gap.
Yeah.
So my Five Stones for Slaying Giants, I reread it a couple of months ago, and I thought, ooh, that is antiquated at this point. I need to read version 2 with some current movie references.
Yes. Well, that's good. So, what this might, well, going to jump off, I guess. I want to ask you a couple of things about employees and staffing, because you've spoken a lot about the importance of selection and development and retention of great employees. Do you have a framework that you can describe for us about identifying those potential star performers during the hiring process?
You bet. I'm a big believer in assessments.
Mm.
And in the world of assessments, and we're talking personality assessments like Myers-Briggs, Berkman, DISC, you can benchmark. And I define benchmarking as if the job could talk, what would the job say for sales, management, leadership, customer service, forklift driver? And you start looking at the best attributes of the job, and that's becomes your benchmark. And from there, when you're taking somebody in for an interview, you can use the assessment to benchmark against what you think is the optimal to determine, is this person qualified to go to the next level in the process? We all know how expensive it is to make a bad hiring mistake. It's
Mhm.
just tremendous. And I use the assessments to help a little bit on moving that candidate through the process. It's not the tell all, it's not the be all. It's about 38 to 42% of the influence factor. Their
Mhm.
job experience, their life experience, their career development has to be taken into consideration. But if the tie goes, if I got 3 people that's competing for one slot, the assessments may allow me to lean towards someone who has the potential of having a better fit for the company. So that's one of the things I use.
Yeah, that's good. So building on that then, once you've hired that promising talent, are there some development strategies that you have found most effective for nurturing the growth and ensuring that they reach their potential kind of within your own corporate environment?
Yes, a couple of things. I take the assessment and it's not a one and done because the assessment has so much rich learning material in it that I can use that to continue to create a coaching path for that one employee and to create a coaching and a mentoring type of environment. So depending upon the position, I may get a mentor mentoring that person through through the maze, if you will, of this career. And that
Yeah.
mentorship might last 3 months, 6 months, or a year, depending upon the goals of the mentor.
Right. And that being able to retain employees seldom comes down to the salary, correct?
Correct.
Yes, it really comes down to developing the individual because let's say we all know maybe that we're the greatest common denominator in all of our problems, but we don't know what we don't know. And so we need to have those mentorship relationships. So then to the professor side of your world and that teaching of sales and marketing at University of Houston, what fundamental principles do you like to instill in your students that you believe will remain relevant regardless of how technology evolves?
Great question. I teach this semester, I'm teaching a marketing strategies class.
Mhm.
So, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create content that's relatable to the students so they're not thinking this is just an academic exercise for the next 4 years. I'll never use it again in the real
Mhm.
world. I really want to bring in, and so I start every class with What's the latest marketing jingle, marketing impact that you've heard, that you've seen, that you've listened to? So we all can look at that. I bring in video, I bring in analogies that are current, and then we just kind of pick that apart. This is how this works. This is where that goes. And then if it's a sales class, like I teach a class in sales at the University of Houston, I typically invite my students into my world. Here's the
Mm,
deal I'm working on. Here's where I'm going. Here's what I'm trying to do. What do you think? What do you think I should do? Based on everything we've learned so far from the text, what's my next logical step? And I invite my students to be part of my world as well, so that they say, "Oh my goodness, that's true. I can influence his sales career." Yeah, you could. I think you should ask better questions, Curt. Great idea. Have you checked that person's LinkedIn profile? Oh, no, I didn't do that. Hey, Curt, why don't you bounce some of those questions through AI to see if you could? And so
mhm.
it's an interaction. It's fun. It's teaching today has been so fun when it's talking technical things.
Yes, and I'm sure it's very rewarding too to see the younger generation pick up on these necessary skills.
You bet.
And and I do want to ask you then about the what I call automated intelligence. It's referred to, of course, as AI and artificial intelligence. Can you talk about that being used as a tool in a salesman or saleswoman's toolkit?
You bet. I think today, a lot of the places where AI can be used, and again, we're recording this, and in about 2 seconds, it'll be antiquated because of the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
AI is leapfrogging. I use it, and I encourage my sales pros to use it for research, not only researching the company, but researching your product against the competitors
Mm,
and allowing that to be bounced off of these tools. I use it to craft open-ended questions. And if my sales pro is very well versed in behavioral styles, craft it in the language of D, I, S, or C for the 4 different
mm,
profiles in the DISC
yes.
profile.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
I'm using it a lot when it comes to compare and contrast to different products. I'm using it by, like, for instance, I just got done doing a seminar. Here's the plant manager. Here's their LinkedIn profile. Here's where they work. Here's the 2 products they're evaluating. Create a SWOT analysis for that person at that company for these reasons. Now I'm becoming very, very intentional. So when I have that meeting with the plant manager at Nebraska Beef, and they're
Mhm,
looking at Baldor versus WEG as 2 different
right.
industrial motors, I can say, "Look, I know why you'd be leaning toward this one over here because of the immediate cost. But you've got to take into consideration that they're not manufactured in the United States, so there could be a future tariff lien. This is why
Mhm,
I'm recommending a local. It's more this and such." And again, I'm using their language, and it's been fun because it does connect. The other part, Michael, is I might be frustrated because I can't get my foot in the door at a certain prospect, but I have his email. Have AI generate a cartoon or an image of me trying to get my foot in the door at this particular company or this particular person. And it's an AI generated image, so there's no copyright problems.
right.
I'll just cut and paste that in there and going, "Hey, Bill, this is as close as I've gotten to see you," or whatever that would be. It may not get a phone call back,
Mhm,
but at least it's creative enough to think, huh, hey, Bill, if I'm working this hard to get an appointment with you, think how much harder I'll work once you become my customer. And then it
yes,
just goes on.
that's right. So then here's one of the things that we have to that salespeople, who I am not currently a salesperson, but one of the things that we need is motivation.
Mm.
And so who motivates, let's say who can be that motivating force, or who can motivate that motivator? And that's certainly someone like yourself. You energize others, and where do you find that you personally find your inspiration and drive as you're moving forward in career and teaching?
That's a great question. It is lonely out there when you're doing whatever you're doing by yourself. If you're driving in your car and you're a sales pro, as you said, you're in the parking lot, first thing you have to do is turn the car off, then maybe unbuckle the seatbelt. You need motivation to get you through some of those really hard times.
Hmm.
I've got a band of other professionals, and then we meet once a month. We hold ourselves accountable to that one. It's an independent group of people who are in that leadership or speaking world, so that when things get really, really tough and you just can't see yourself getting out of bed that day, you've got a group of people you can call.
Hmm.
Sometimes the sales manager acts that way. Sometimes if you don't have a sales manager who can do that one, you can recruit artificial intelligence to become your sales manager, your sales coach, and have this sentinel kind of product or program ask you questions, get you going. So the hardest question is who motivates the motivator. We all who are in this space of traveling and generating content,
Hmm.
it's tough. It's tough. You've got to have a band of brothers or sisters who can help you when the going gets tough.
That's right. Yeah, Jesus had 12.
Exactly, and from the 12, he had 3.
That's right.
Yeah,
And so we do need that band of brothers or sisters, like you say, and just knowing that a friend will probably stick closer than a brother, and being able to be the tide maybe that rises your buddy's ship one day, and know that he or she's going to come along and put some wind in your sails the next time. Uh, if you could go back to maybe your younger self, just starting out in sales, getting through that degree program, what piece of advice would you offer?
well, I would say ask more questions, be a student of the
Mm.
game. I Gosh, Michael, I beat myself up because I thought I was super smart and I knew it all at 27.
Yeah.
And, you just don't. The best thing to do is to ask other people, right? I wanna if I'm wanting to learn how to play basketball and LeBron James says, "Come on, let's play," or, whomever is the basketball king at that point in time, I wanna listen to that part. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. I'm gonna watch what they do. They're gonna come in early, they're gonna stay late, they're gonna be intentional about what they do. Man, I got lazy early on. And, there's another we've been throwing cliches and quotes out like
Yes.
crazy. Here's another one. Good is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
And if I just settle for good in my relationship, in my marriage, in my relationship with my employer, in my knowledge of the product, it's good enough, it'll never become great. And I can have a second rate company with a second rate sales pro, ask better questions, and take the sale.
Hmm. Yes. In a recent recording that I did for 5 a.m. podcast, I was chatting with Ryan Reichert, and he was talking. He gave me this phrase that I love. It's ask, don't task. And he was saying that in reference to his daughters and him being a dad. But boy, oh boy, when we think of our sales prospects, and whether we have a relationship with them or not, we can actually find out that, oh man, I'm tasking my client way too much. I need to be asking, not tasking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good call on that. That's right.
Yes. And so, in that, we've talked about developing the sales guy or gal, developing even the relationship with the client. I want to ask you about the success that you've achieved over the years. And of course, everyone faces obstacles. What would you consider maybe your greatest professional challenge? And how did you overcome and adapt to it?
Oh, great. I think one of my biggest professional challenges was the headspace between my ears,
Mm,
not thinking I could do the things that I accomplished. Um, there's so much negative self-talk that we in sales, we just beat ourselves up with that. And for the longest time, I just held myself back that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, witty enough, strong enough to compete with these people who were what I felt was better, stronger, more intelligent
mm,
than me. And so in order for me to get out of that, I had to go back to that band of brothers and say, "Hey guys, I'm really struggling with this. I need you to speak some truth into my life, and I'm going to invite you to speak truth."
mm, mhm,
And once they did, I realized, oh my gosh, I thought you were going to tell me I suck. And they said, no, Kurt, we were waiting for you to ask because you have everything you need to get into that business.
mhm.
You're the one holding yourself back.
That's right. So
So,
that there again, the asking, asking and developing, asking good questions. And I heard one minister say once, we have one mouth and we have two ears. So
Yeah.
we can ask and we can listen twice as good as we talk. But I want to ask you then, sales profession, it has traditionally been plagued with high turnover rates. And maybe people feeling like you were just describing about yourself of, man, I am just not having success. But based on your experience, are there some retention strategies that could actually work for keeping those, whether they're top sales or entry level sales, that talent engaged and committed to working with that company?
You bet. There is an old book. I always gave it away to my students. It was from Og Mandino, the
Oh,
greatest salesman in the world.
yeah.
And he had these 10 scrolls. It was before Patrick Lencioni made his amazing books on leadership. But
Mm,
Og Mandino's story talks about that young boy who was under the tutelage of the carpet seller. And one of the things he said is multiply your value 10 times, multiply your value 100 times. One of the best ways to be retained in this industry of constant turnover is to add more value. And the
mhm.
value is perceived by the person that you're giving it to, not yourself, right? So you've got to say, hey, I want to be that person that says, I'll only buy a car from this person. But
Yeah.
what if it's a Chevy and the guy only sells Fords? I'll give him the chance to go find me that Chevy type thing.
Hmm.
So we got to add value. And so therein lies the question, what is valuable? But that's what you have to ask your prospect or your client or your customer. Hey, I know you've seen a lot of sales guys here. What would be valuable to you in a salesperson? Maybe it's the quality, delivery.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the service. Maybe it's the reputation. Maybe it's the ease of doing business. And therein lies the chance that, you may be that person in the greatest salesman in the world who
Yes.
multiplies your value 10, 100 times. And you just you got a bad pick. You landed at a company who doesn't value you, doesn't appreciate what you've done. You've crushed your quota, you've crushed the numbers, and the next year they want to adjust you back to something else.
Hmm.
Somehow, some way, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, that's not on me. I know what I can do, I know what I can produce. And you know what? I just got caught up in this machine because we in business sometimes we're so wrapped up in the next quarter, the next month's sales. Then we start getting egotistical and he's making more money than I am and she's
Yeah.
making more money than I am. Let's change her plan. Well, now you're killing the goose that's laying the golden egg.
Hmm.
What can we do to make sure everybody wins before we start changing their compensation plans? Because the good ones will say, you know what, I can add this much value somewhere else.
Hmm.
And that's tough.
That is tough.
Hate to see that go.
Yes. And that is such a big, it's so expensive for a company to bring somebody on. And it can actually take maybe 2 years before they're actually turning a profit from that one individual. So being able to build the employee, build the sales staff emotionally and mentally is such an enormous value for both the staff member being set up to succeed and the company being able to profit off the endeavors. I do want to ask you about behavioral analytics because you've studied behavioral analytics extensively, and you're actually a certified professional behavior analyst, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, how can understanding these behavioral styles improve sales interactions and those team dynamics?
Well, it goes to understanding what you're selling. And usually I'm talking to the leadership or the management at this
Hmm.
point when we're talking analytics. And we're just looking at what are the behavioral measurements that can be repeatable and predictable. It could be resiliency, the ability to get back up. It could be tenacity. It could be a sense of urgency. And one of the behaviorals that I was taught from Jim Jacobus, who mentored me in all of this, is Curt, you've got to make sure they have an element of continuous learning.
Hmm.
When you're looking at people to hire and you ask them, what was the last book you read, seminar you attended, podcast you listened to, as it relates to the craft that you're in? And if the person just kind of looks at you and says, back in the 80s, I went to a Zig Ziglar conference. That's a long time ago.
Hmm.
Continuous learning as an analytic helps me. As somebody who's highly resistant to change, that could be a warning flag for me because
Yeah.
we're in an element or an environment, there's a lot of change. Somebody who is resilient, the ability to bounce back, that might be something I need in a business development manager because I'm asking them to go out there and basically either knock on doors or cold call or develop net new business, and that's gonna be kind of a slog for a
Hmm.
while. And
Yeah.
so if I don't have those repeatable, predictable, measurements, I could hire the wrong person, or I could have somebody in that slot, and I'm just demanding that they become somebody that they never were intended to be, and that just
Yeah.
frustrates both of us.
Yes. So as we're wrapping up, I thought of one other question I want to ask you, and that is we talked about the networking and I feel like we danced around asking for the sale. So can you talk about going from building that relationship to asking for the sale?
You bet. In the impact process that was discovered and perfected by the Brooks Group, the last part of that six-step process is tie it up.
Hmm.
And it's a very simple thing. The first 70% of that sales process, if you will, is discovering, is understanding the person, their behavior, what their needs, wants, and whys are. And the last 30% is making a professional recommendation that they would go into this direction. Would you like to start tomorrow, or what would be the next step in order for us to secure that? They, meaning the people on the opposite side of the phone, the Zoom call, or the desk, know that you're in sales. So they know that you're going to make a professional recommendation based on your experience in the industry once you understand and they understand that there's a fit, form, and function. And
Hmm.
so the challenge is you've got to be able to ask for the order because you know you've done all the work, you've done the discovery, you've done the research. This makes professional sense that you would just go to the next level. And and
Yeah.
and again, we just 50%, I think the latest statistic I saw, 50% of the sales call, the salesperson doesn't close, meaning
Wow.
they don't close for the sale or they don't close for the highest level of commitment at the customer's pace. If the customer says, "Curt, sounds great, but it's the holiday season and we're not ready to make a decision yet." Great. What about January 4th at 10 o'clock? Can I call you back then? I'm closing for the next level of commitment. Or, Curt, I don't think I have the authority to make this decision. You need to talk to Lisa. Great. Is Lisa down the hall? Could we get an introduction? You're closing for something because if you just leave the "I'll call you back" or "why don't you take a while to think about my proposal," that's not closing. And so sometimes, again, if we're sitting in our car and we're wondering why we can't unfasten the seatbelt,
Hmm.
it's because during that day, that week, that month, we haven't done the simple closes. Close for the next appointment, close for an evaluation, close for a review. It's the little closes that help us get to the big closes.
Yeah. Wow. Kurt, thank you for joining us today. What a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge and insights today.
Oh, Michael, you're probably the most detailed professional podcast host
Oh,
I've had the opportunity to cross paths with. This has been such a blessing for me.
oh, good. Well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I'll take them for sure. Thank you so much. What a great conversation, ladies and gentlemen. If you have found value in today's conversation, I know I did. I'm sure you did as well. I strongly encourage you to connect with Kurt and explore his services. Whether you're looking to elevate your sales team, enhance your personal development, maybe you want to book an energizing speaker for your next event, Kurt offers exceptional speaking, training, coaching opportunities. So you can connect with our friend Kurt. Head over to peaksalesstrategy.com. You can learn more about how Kurt can help you and your organization reach new heights in sales performance. And you can also find Kurt on that Facebook and LinkedIn that he talked about. Just search Curt Tueffert. You'll find him. He'll be right there. His online presence is just as engaging as he is in person. So thank you for tuning in to 5 a.m. podcast today. Remember that early bird doesn't just catch the worm with the right strategy. It revolutionizes the entire worm catching industry. So until next time, please seize your day. Enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen. Need morning momentum? 5 a.m. podcast, Wednesdays, 7 a.m. on WDJY 99.1 FM. 5 a.m. podcast is brought to you in part by mkci.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. Enhance your competitive CAD advantage. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5 a.m. podcast. Thanks for watching the show. You can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com.